If you look at this level of education, they are synonymous with what operates in Nigeria and some other countries because we have different levels of education and each level has its commensurate age. So this idea came from Plato. Secondly, Plato made case for playway and Socratic teaching methods. Socratic teaching methods, especially at the elementary and the primary, pre-primary and the primary level of education. Because at that level, we deal with children. Let us use play to teach our children. Let us use, Socratic methods to teach the children. Because when you use play to teach children, they will be more, involved, and it will make teaching more interesting to them. Plato also made case for women education, and this is also in practice in Nigerian educational practice today. System today. Our educational system also favors girl child education. We emphasize the need to educate both the male and the female children. They are equally important. Plato also made case for state control of education. What do we mean by state control of education? Education should be under the control of governments. Governments should be responsible to educate the citizenry, give education, quality education for that matter. It is the responsibility of government to do this. Self-discipline. Plato maintained that education should aim at promoting self-discipline. It shouldn't be until we are forced before we realize what we need to do as responsible, citizens. So education that we received must, promote in us that attributes, that characteristics of maintaining self-discipline. Plato also made case for 1 year military training. After you could see what we talk about when he divided the education into levels. At the point, students are expected to be exposed to the military and gymnastics. So, and after education, he also said that there should be 1 year military training. This is the basis for modern day NYSC in Nigeria, National Youth Service Corps, a year. Those of us who had experienced that thing, we know that the activities during the NYSC program are synonymous with military training. That idea is from Plato. That idea is from Plato. Then Aristotle. Aristotle was born at Stagira in northern Greece. Just a coincidence. We have been dealing with, philosophers from Greece. And if you flash back at one of our previous lectures, you will agree with me that philosophy actually, originated from Greece, a combination of two Greek words. And it was Plato that first, told us the meaning of philosophy. So that could be the reason why most of the educational philosophers, especially the traditional ones, the founding fathers, they were from Greece. So Aristotle was born at Stagira in northern Greece. He was the most notable product of educational program devised by Plato. He was the most notable because he spent 20 years of his whole life studying at the academy. The academy was the first school, the first educational institution in the world, which Plato established. So Plato was the student of Socrates. Aristotle was the student of Plato. And he spent 20 years of his whole life studying at what? Where? The academy. The academy that was established by Plato. So when Plato died, Aristotle returned to his own native Macedonia, where He was supposed to have participated in the education of Philip's son, Alexander the Great. So he went back after the demise of Plato. Then he came back to Athens with Alexander's approval in 335 BC and established his own school at the Lyceum, spending most of the rest of his life engaged there in research, teaching, and writing. So he also established his own school, and the school is called the Lyceum. And what did he do? He engaged in research, teaching, and writing. But what are his own ideas and what have been his own contributions that we have found very, you know, relevant to modern day educational practice? Aristotle believed in liberal education. Liberal education that we developed, you know, sound mind. His own liberal education is also very synonymous with the idea of Plato that favored state control of education. So education should be made more liberal to accommodate everybody, to accommodate everybody. And this is similar to state control of education, which was the idea of Plato. Secondly, according to Aristotle, the ultimate aim of both education and life is nothing but happiness. Education that does not give happiness is not education. Life that does not give happiness is not life. It doesn't worth living. So if we are pursuing education, it must be education that gives us happiness, joy. If we are in this world, this life must give us happiness. Anything sort of that is not acceptable. I mean, to Aristotle. And like Plato, Aristotle believed in happy life because life must give happiness. When he maintained that goodness and wisdom and the pursuit of knowledge are very, very vital to what? To human happiness. Goodness, wisdom, pursuit of knowledge, those three things are very, very vital, are very, very critical to providing human beings with what? Happiness. When human beings are happy, the life will be meaningful to them. Uh, Aristotle made case for the teaching of school subjects like music, like gymnastics, like physical education, as well as reading and writing, which he believed are practical subjects that would enable students to live a moral life, that will enable students to live a moral life. When you engage in music, in gymnastics, in physical education, extensive reading and writing, this practical subject would develop in us ability to live, moral life according to Aristotle. Going forward, another very notable educational philosophers, especially from the Western world, is Jean Jacques Rousseau, J.J. Rousseau. J.J. Rousseau was a Swiss. He was born in Geneva, Switzerland on June 28, 1712. He was greatly influenced by the mysterious circumstances that surrounded his birth. His birth was surrounded with mysterious circumstances. And this made him to comment in his book that I was born ill and weak. I caused my mother her life, and my birth was first of my misfortunes. His birth happened to be his first misfortune in life. Because when he was born very ill and weak. You can imagine a newly born child, ill, was very weak, and her mother died, by virtue of his birth. And that is why he concluded that his birth was first of his misfortunes. By implication, J.J. Rosu was orphaned at an early age. He left home at 16, working as a tutor and musician before undertaking a literary career while in his 40s, in his early 40s. He undertook a literary career after, he had worked as a tutor, as a musician. His autobiographical text or book called Les Confessions, that is Confessions, that was published in 1783, offer a thorough, if somewhat self-serving, a thorough account of his turbulent life. He lived a turbulent life. But J.J. Rosu first attracted widespread attention with his prize-winning essay. That was when the attention now shifted to this great man with his prize-winning essay titled Discuss So Less Sciences et Earthless Arts, that is, Discourse on the Sciences and the Arts, which he wrote in 1750, in which he described as harmful. He condemned the harmful effects of modern civilization. The harmful effect of modern civilization. Because he challenged, he condemned, and he believed that modern civilization has a harmful effect. In that, you know, uh, essay he wrote in 1750 got him attracted to many people. What does this young man actually was talking about? You know, but what are the ideas and his contributions to him, to J.J. Russell? The aim of education is to learn how to live. You have to learn how to live. Not only live, but live well. So when you are educated and you do not know how to live your life, that is not what education should aim at. Education should aim at, you know, assisting us to live our life the way we want. That is why it said that the aim of education is to learn how to live. Secondly, J.J. Russell believed that knowledge comes from the senses and that children should engage actively with a well-ordered environment. When students are in a well-ordered, well-mannered, properly arranged environment, children will learn from different senses and they will acquire knowledge, you know. Then Russell made case for child-centered education, the education that will place the child at the center of teaching learning activities. And of course, there are some teaching methods that actually, you know, favor the placement of child at the center of teaching learning activities, experiential learning, cooperative learning, you know, field trip, I mean, field classroom, and so even field trip. Want to place students at the center of the teaching learning activities. It is the idea of J.J. Rousseau. J.J. Rousseau also believed that the environment of the child is a resource place for learning. It is not only within the classroom that students can learn. And that is why he made case that he believed that knowledge comes from the senses. That when children are actively engaged in an ideal society, in an ideal environment, children will learn. And therefore, environment of the child is a resource on its own for the children to learn. They learn through their senses. They acquired knowledge through their senses. And Russell also believed that no new learning task should take place unless the child indicates his or her readiness to learn new things. We don't have to force children to learn. You know, in other words, he underscored the idea of these individual differences. Some students learn fast, some learn slowly. So let each child show readiness to learn new things before we can, you know, introduce such a child to new learning tasks. And uniqueness of the child should be, you know, respected. This is why the idea of you know, individual differences come from. Russell believed that each child is unique on its own, and this, could be responsible for the recognition that is given to special education, special needs education globally. Because special needs education wants us to teach the students, taking into consideration their uniqueness, you know, their handicapping, so to say, or their exceptionality. That's better. Their exceptionality, because each child is unique on its own. Therefore, the duty of teachers in this situation, according to Rosu, is to love, is to sympathize, is to guide, and be a good advisor to his pupils, not a dictator of ideas. Teachers' role should revolve around loving the children, sympathizing with them, guiding them, and advising them, but not dictating ideas to them. So these are the ideas and the contributions of Rosu that have been found very useful in modern day educational practice. John Dewey, 1859 to 1952, educated in his native Vermont and at Johns Hopkins University. John Dewey enjoyed a lengthy career as an educator, as a psychologist, and as a philosopher. And that is why we are examining the works that he did during his lifetime. John Dewey initiated the Progressive Laboratory School at the University of Chicago, where his reforms in methods of education could be put into practice. He carried out a series of reforms in teaching methodologies. So he now initiated Progressive Laboratory School when he was at the University of Chicago. And that gave him the opportunity to put into practice all the reforms that he carried out in methods of education. And as a professor of philosophy, Dewey taught at Michigan, Chicago, and Columbia universities. Columbia universities. So he was instrumental in founding the American Association of University Professors as a professional organization for post-secondary educator. For post-secondary educator. His ideas and contributions. John Dewey also favored child-centered method of teaching, just like J.J. Rousseau. Let's ensure that we engage students actively in the teaching learning process. Let's put them at the center of the teaching learning process. And John Dewey believed that the aim of education is to develop learners' ability to deal with future problems. Learners' ability rather to deal with future problems. In other words, the cardinal aim of education is intellectual growth and development. Intellectual growth and development. When you are intellectually endowed, when an individual has been intellectually developed, they will believe that that person should be able to deal with future problems. They will also believe that social activity is also an avenue for the development of individuals through contact and communication with his fellow men. So he actually favored social environment. When individuals are engaged in social activities, it is an avenue for individuals, to develop because you make contact, you communicate with fellow human beings, you share ideas, and therefore Dewey contended that education has social roles to perform in the society. Education has social roles to perform in the society. So Dewey also believed that teachers have the role of maintaining good and cordial relationship with the school and the community where it is located. They have critical roles to maintain, in the maintenance of good and cordial relationship between the school and the community where the school is located. And of course, Those that are in the field of educational administration will agree with me that school community relationship is one of the task areas of school administrators. This idea was, you know, has its link with that of John Dewey because he believed that teachers they have role of maintaining good and cordial relationship between the school and the community where that school is located. Jean Piaget, 1896 to 1980. Jean Piaget was also a Swiss. He was a Swiss developmental psychologist. I was known for his epistemological studies with children, epistemology, you know, study of knowledge. So he was very known. He was a developmental psychologist. He focused more on children. So he was widely known and recognized for his epistemological studies with children. His theory of cognitive development and epistemological view are together called genetic epistemology. So he propounded the theory of cognitive development as well as etymological view. So when you combine the two together, they are called genetic epistemology. And as the director of the International Bureau of Education, Piaget declared in 1934 that only education is capable of saving our societies from possible collapse, whether violence or gradual. Only education. If society is going to collapse violently or gradually, and we want to prevent this, we need to work on education. It is the only thing that is capable of saving the societies from possible collapse, according to Jean Piaget. In fact, Jean Piaget uh, was described as the great pioneer of the controphysicist theory of knowing, according to Ernst von Glissersfeld. He described Jean Piaget as the great pioneer of the constructivist theory of knowing. And that is why Jean Piaget defined or described himself as an epistemologist who has interest in the process of the qualitative development of knowledge. Qualitative development of knowledge. Sheikh Usman Danfodio, we are now coming down to African philosophers. We are done with the Western educational philosophers. We also have African educational philosophers. Those people, those great men whose ideas form the basis of modern day educational practice. And one of them is Sheikh Usman Danfodio, 1754 to 1817. Sheikh Usman Danfodio was the founder of the Sokoto Caliphate in 1809. He was a religious teacher, a writer, and an Islamic promoter. Danfodio was one of a class of urbanized ethnic living in the Hausa states in what is today called the northern Nigeria. He was a well-educated person, individual in classical Islamic science, philosophy, and theology, and this made him to become a highly referred religious thinker during his time. Danfodio was a teacher of the Maliki School of Law and the Qadriya order of Sufism, and he lived in the city-state of Kabul until 1802, when, you know, after being motivated by his reformist ideas and under increased repression by the then local authorities, he led his followers into exile. So he left Kabul with his people and went into exile. He criticized the heavy taxation and obstruction that was created in the business and trade of the Hausa state by the legal system. The legal system during that time, placed heavy taxes, also obstructed creation of free trade and businesses. And Usman Danfodio, you know, was a critic of the then legal system. Fodio's ideas and contributions. Fodio wrote more than 100 books concerning religion, government, culture, and society. He also wrote about 400 poems in Arabic, Fulfulde, and Hausa languages. He was a great writer. He developed a critique of existing African Muslim elites. Then there were some African Muslim elites, but Fodio criticized them for what he saw as their greed, their paganism, or violation of the standards of Sharia law and heavy taxation. So he criticized the then African Muslim elites on the basis of their greed, on the basis of their paganism, and the fact that they violated standard Sharia law. And like I said earlier on, he also criticized the heavy taxation of the then legal system. Fordio also encouraged literacy and scholarship, including for men, and several of his daughters also emerged as scholars and writers. So, if you go to the north, you will also see great women of virtue, great women that are great scholars, because Fordio did not only encourage education for male child, he also made education compulsory for women. So he encouraged literacy and scholarship for everybody. And it is on record that several of his own daughters they eventually emerged as scholars and writers. Fodio also created a theocratic state with a stricter interpretation of Islam because he believed that the then African Muslim elites they abused Sharia law. So he created a theocratic state with a stricter, very strict interpretation of Islam. These are the ideas and contributions of Usman Dan Fodio to the modern day educational practice, in the country. Chief Obafemi Awolowo, 1909 to 1987. Chief Jeremiah Oyeniyi Obafemi Awolowo was born on March 9, 1909 at Ikenne in Ogun State, the southwestern part of the country. He has his education career at Wesley School, Imo, Abeokuta, Wesley College, Ibadan, and the University of London. He was a teacher, a stenographer, a journalist, a lawyer, but he was, widely known as a politician. He died on May 19 and May 1987. He died in May 1987. What are the ideas and contributions of late Chief Obafemi Awolowo? Late Chief Obafemi Awolowo uh, was the brain behind Universal Primary Education Program, which he, uh, you know, put in place in 1945 in the then western region of Nigeria when he was the premier. When he was the premier, he created Universal Primary Education Program. This program made provision for free and primary education for everybody. So the modern day free, whether you bear, universal basic education, you know, has a link with the UPE program of the then western region of Nigeria, which was the idea of late Chief Obafemi Awolowo. Obafemi Awolowo advocated for a 1 year compulsory military training that was supposed to be a kind of service to the nation, just like what Plato did during his time. And this is what we are using in the modern day Nigeria, National Youth Service Corps, where graduates, you know, especially from universities, especially, first degree graduates, we have to go for a 1 year military training under the National Youth Service Corps program. Awolowo believed that education is an inalienable right of every citizen. Hence, he strongly believed in democratization of education. Let us democratize education. Let education be, made available for everybody. It is uh, in every individual's fundamental human rights. And this is also akin to the education for all, you know, which makes basic education to be basic, so to say, to be free to every individual. Awolowo's educational philosophy was based on the principles of mass education and what? And equality of education, respectively. He therefore contended that education at all levels must be free. Education at all levels must be free. That is where we can have mass education. That is where everybody can have access to equality of education. Late Chief Obafemi Awolowo also argued that education is the only means of achieving self-determination through nationalism and a progressive society. Not only this, Awolowo believed that education is the means of removing ignorance, poverty, grading pauper, and diseases. So he believed that education must be given to everybody for us to achieve self-determination, for us to have through nationalism, for us to have a progressive society, for us to improve and to remove poverty, to remove diseases, to remove ignorance. Everybody must be educated. Ngugi wa Thiong'o, 1938 to date, a Kenyan author. Ngugi wa Thiong'o is a Kenyan author. He was born on January 5, 1938, and he received a BA in English from college in 1963. In 1977, Ngugi embarked upon a novel form of theater in his native Kenya, which sought to liberate the theoretical process from what he held to be the general bourgeois education system by encouraging spontaneity and audience participation in the performances. In the United States of America, Ngugi wa Thiong'o has taught at Yale University for years and has since also taught at New Cook University. So he holds a dual professorship in comparative literature and performance studies at the University of California, Irvine. So is a professor both at the New Cook University and the University of California. He is recognized as a professor, of comparative literature and performance studies at the two universities. What are his own ideas and contributions? Thiong'o's ideas and contributions. Ngugi wa Thiong'o has several works, which include novels, plays, short stories, and essays that range from literary and social criticism to children's literature. He published his first novel, Weep Not Child, in 1964. Weep Not Child in 1964, which he wrote while attending the University of Leeds in England. And it's this novel happens to be the first in English to be published by an East African. Weep Not Child happens to be the first novel to be published in English by an East African national. Wationgo is the founder and editor of the Gikuyu language journal called Muturi. And in 1992, Ngugi Wationgo became a professor of comparative literature and performance studies at the New York University, where he had the Erich Maria Remarque Chair, and he is currently a distinguished professor of English and comparative literature, as well as a former director of the International Center for Writing and Translation at the University of California, Irvine. So he wrote so many books. He wrote so many books, and the books are in sharp criticism of social criticism to children's literature. So he is a great man of, you know, international and global recognition. Kwame Gyeki, 1939 to 2019. Kwame is a Ghanaian philosopher. Sorry, he was a Ghanaian philosopher and an important figure in the development of modern African philosophy. He was born on the 30th of December 1939. Geki studied first at the University of Ghana, then at Harvard University, where he obtained his PhD with a thesis on Greco-Arabic philosophy. Kwame has been on intent the Smithsonian Institution's Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. He has been an intern, so to say, and a lifetime fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. He was a professor of philosophy at the University of Ghana and a visiting professor of philosophy and African American studies at Temple University. He died on June 13, 2019. Kwame's ideas and contributions. Kwame Gyeki challenges the view that in African thought, community confers personhood on the individual, and thus the individual's identity is merely a derivative of the community. He challenged that view that no, it is not correct. It is not the community that confers personhood on individual, and therefore individual's identity is quite distinct from the community. So instead, Geki argued that African thought ascribes definite value to the individual, and he cites an Akan proverb: all persons are children of God. No one is a child of the heart. You know, this African proverb, was cited in support of his argument that a person is conceived as a theomorphic being, having in their nature an aspect of God, because all persons are what? Are children of God. No one is a child of the heart. So there's no way community can confer personhood on the individual, according to Kwame. This soul, this soul, which is Okra to the Akan, you know, according to Geki, is described as divine and originating with God. Thus, Kwame argues that a person is viewed as more than just a material or physical object, but what? A children of God, and therefore intrinsically valuable. Intrinsically valuable. That is, people are intrinsically valuable because they should be seen more than just a material or physical object, but rather children of God. Children of God. And finally, Gyaki's idea was that the person is conceived as a unique individual, as in his proverb, antelope soul is one, Dicas is another. So the soul of antelope is different from that of Dica because there is uniqueness in every individual, you know, so that each individual is self-complete and the reality of the person cannot be derivative and posterior to that of the community. So he argued that community, you know, has no basis to confer personhood or individual. Okay. Now, thank you for your rapt attention. I hope by the time you listen again and again to this video, to this lecture, you should be able to have acquired the objectives that we set at the beginning of the class. Thank you once again for your rapt attention. Stay tuned to my channel. Subscribe to this channel. Click the notification button. Hit it so that you'll be having access to some other videos that I have on this channel. Once again, I am Maruf Akinwale Oladejo from University of Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you. God bless.